Hey folks, so I recently taught A Feast for Odin, and good lord, if that game does not have a learning curve problem, I don't know what does. There's a frankly ridiculous amount of actions you can take, and at the beginning of the game, it feels like you can barely do anything. So with that in mind, I've collected a few strategies that are going to help you get over that initial hurdle and have you playing your first games with a lot more confidence. So let's get started. The biggest issue that new players have, it's definitely what I struggled with at first, is direction. There's just too many options and you don't know what to go for. So here are a few good choices: whaling, pillaging, or hunting, crafting, and laying snares. If you focus on one of these main actions as your primary means of acquiring tiles, you'll have a solid foundation for the rest of the game. They're all going to need something different, but if you look at the actions that they directly correspond to, you'll see some obvious requirements. All of the hunting spaces need weapons and wood, pillaging spaces need swords and stones, and crafting needs ore and money. And they're all going to require at least one boat, though they will need different ones. But boats are also good for something that you should plan to do no matter what strategy you go for. Islands can be pretty scary at first. They seem like they're a lot to manage when you probably feel like you're having trouble with just your main board. The thing is, the benefits of getting an island almost always outweigh the cost, but you should probably stick to just getting one on your first game. The C&D islands can award a ton of points, especially on their flip sides, but they also need you to be able to cover up a lot of negatives, potentially with only a couple rounds to do so. In any case, I'd say for your first game, try to get an A or a B island. They aren't as valuable points-wise, but they can grant some excellent bonuses and early game income. Speaking of which, income and bonuses are extremely important, and you should try to start earning them as soon as possible. It's entirely doable to increase your income to 2 silver on round 1, and you should try to keep increasing it every chance you get, at least for the first few rounds. Islands definitely help with this, but one thing to keep in mind is that the really big tiles are actually much harder to use for this purpose. Anything bigger than 3 squares to a side will be usable, but tricky to manage and are generally better spent on covering negatives. It's not to say that they're bad to have, but in the early game, it's often better to focus on getting more smaller tiles than a couple really big ones. A common mistake that new players make is thinking that they need to pick up a lot more food than they really do. The thing is, the harvest will generally keep your people satisfied for the first couple rounds, and by the time you aren't getting the harvest, you should have a couple bonus tiles to help you out. On top of that, really big food tiles like pears and whale meat are much better kept as potential upgrades and should only be used as food if absolutely necessary. And another way to keep your food costs down is to emigrate, and early on if you can swing it. You'll need 2 fewer squares of food every round, and you'll get a ton of points for it. Just try to make sure you get a bit of use out of your boat before you send it off. In a lot of games, if you get a starting ability or objective card, that can often give you a roadmap for how to plan your strategy. Unfortunately, the occupation cards in Feast aren't quite so versatile. They can give you a nice boost if you can make them work, but they don't usually have enough strength to carry you through the whole game. And because there are so many, you aren't likely to find a lot that combo with each other. Occupation cards are just a small part of a much bigger game. Sometimes they can help, but sometimes you just play them for the points, or not at all, and that's fine too. This isn't to say that you shouldn't utilize them if you can, but you shouldn't feel beholden to them either. And those are my top 5 beginner strategy tips for A Feast for Odin. Now, this is a big game, and I definitely left a few things out, but if you were feeling nervous about jumping in, or maybe you had some difficulty last time you played, hopefully these tips will give you something to think about. I've also included in the description box some links to some more detailed strategy guides that I leaned on a bit while writing this video. Or if you've got some really good tips that you want to share, please feel free to leave them in the comments. Either way, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!